Hello everyone, good evening. This is Vishal, and you're watching Power Within Psychology. This is another episode on Insiders Inside Series 4.2, and today we are going to talk about pursuing professional diploma in clinical psychology, for which we have a resource person, Miss Sukriti Dhingra, and I'll give a short description about her, and I'll introduce her to you. She has done her bachelor's in psychology from University of Delhi, and her master's in mental health study from King's College London. After that, she has done her second master's of science in clinical mental health sciences from UCL, which is University College of London. Sukriti has a lot of experience working as a clinical and working in the area of clinical psychology and mental health. She's working as a clinical psychologist trainee with RCI, and she has worked as a field research assistant with Delhi University. She is an honorary research assistant from University College London, an academic representative of UCL. She has been a student psychologist in South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust, and she has also interned in Dhingra Hospital. So, a lot of experience coming to your side. So, stay tuned with us, and all the questions that you have, please feel free to share with us over the comments, and we will try our best to take up the questions and answer them. All right. So, with that, on the behalf of all of our audience and Power Within Psychology, I would like to invite Ms. Sukriti Dhingra. Hi, Sukriti. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to our Insiders Insights and channel Power Within Psychology, Sukriti. We
Thank
are
you for
grateful
having
for
me.
you. We are grateful that you could take your some time for us and to take your answer, to take our questions.
Happy to help.
So, Sukriti, we would like to start from our first point, which would like to know. You have done your professional diploma in clinical psychology from SGT University. So, how was your overall experience of the institute and the program for the time you were there and your whole learning process?
Thank you for the question. So, SGT is one of the few colleges that is recognized by the Rehabilitation Council of India for their professional licenses, which is like M.PHIL and the PDCP diploma and a couple of other things as well. So, the RCI license is necessary for anybody who wants to practice as a clinical psychologist or a rehabilitation psychologist or a special educationist. So to get that license from the government, you need to be in a RCI approved college or university to get that license. So in north of India, we have a very little information about PDCP, and PDCP as a course is pretty new. So only a few batches have come out. I think we're the third or the second batch, I'm not sure, but only a few batches have done this. So with regards to that, since I've done my master's outside, for me it was not easy to get the MPhil. I'd have to do another master's again, which I didn't want to at that time. So I looked for another option, and since I have two masters, it was a bit easy for PDCP as a course. Otherwise, I think 1 year masters, they're not eligible. So for that, I applied to, I think, only SGT, but before that, I also applied to MPhil just to get an idea. I gave an exam over there as well, like the in-person exam during COVID. But for SGT, since everything happened during COVID, and I was also working as a research assistant for University of Delhi then, I did the whole process online. They were like, do you want to know about the rounds right now, or do I have to tell you about the experience?
As you like, we can take them right now or later on.
Okay, so there were 4 or 5 rounds of interview. The first was the basic computer-based examination, Then the people who got through it, they also had an in-person interview with the faculty. Then there was a group discussion, and then we had a written exam about 2 or 3 questions, after which we got our results within a couple of weeks, I think. Yeah, the experience. Well, SGT is a very big hospital, and it has a very big clinical psychology department as well, which is right opposite the psychiatry wing. So it's very helpful because then the patients who come directly for psychiatry can go easily to therapy if they're being advised, or if somebody chooses to themselves as well. Since the location of the hospital is it's quite inside Haryana, uh, which isn't, it's not NCR, it's further away. So it's for everybody who needs to know. The location is a bit hard to get to, but they have buses and stuff. So if you choose that, that's another option for you. That wasn't an option for me, so I used to travel myself, and it takes a while to get there. So that's one of the things. But it's a big hospital, and the faculty, they're all people within the field. There's nobody outside, so they've either done their MPhils, or they've done their PhDs, or PsyD or whatever in clinical
Yeah.
psychology. So they had a good number of people, well educated people within the field. So that was very helpful. And to start with, our cohort was about like 20, 18 to 20 people. And
Mhm.
since it was COVID, there was a lot of problems during that year as well. It wasn't easy because we had to get used to treating patients with the mask on. And as you understand, therapy, it's like 1 hour of almost 1 hour of talking, talking, talking. So it's really hard. And you also have to get their emotions and their facial expressions, which you do need to judge as a therapist. So that became a bit harder for us. And the location of the hospital being as it is, there was a lot of people from varying backgrounds, very evident in those parts. So people just wanted to focus on medication rather than taking therapy in conjunction. But the people that did choose therapy, they showed a lot of a passion towards it as a patient as well. Like they felt like they needed to be here, and the people around us, like our seniors or our teachers, they were very helpful, that they could help out in that sense. So the experience of the place, there were a lot of things that you needed, that we had to do, that were not mandated by RCI, but they were very helpful to us. We used to have presentations, and we used to be a part of all the presentations. That was very helpful, I think. All in all, despite COVID, despite another lockdown while we were studying, we did have online classes at some point. So I think going forward, I don't know about lockdowns, but there will be some kind of you know mandate of some kind about how you're supposed to treat patients and during this stuff. But I
Yeah.
think even with all the uncertainty, the professors did do a lot of work. They used to work when even the hospitals were shut down, so that was very nice. So all in all, a good university.
Yeah, definitely that's inspiring to hear.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Oh, I just said that that is really inspiring to hear that they were
Thank you.
working. So, Sukriti, in terms of the support that you receive, from the university or the institute, and from the faculty definitely, and from your seniors and colleagues maybe. So, how is that? And
The
also the
support. Well,
rigorous routine of a clinical psychologist that he or she might experience.
support. Well, there was a lot of self learning involved. Like they will help you, the professors, even your seniors, and anybody in your cohort as well, and even the adjoining M.PHIL cohort. They were helpful in the sense that if there is a test that we don't have it, or if there is a better test available for a certain thing, they will share it. Sharing was not a problem with anybody. Like they would like you to, even if they're if someone has a lot of patience, they might give it off to somebody who doesn't have at the moment. So that kind of camaraderie was there. Apart from that, in terms of learning, also we were taught a lot of different things, but we were also taught, I mean, I personally felt that a lot of it has to come down to the fact that you have to self learn and a lot of these things. Like your patient is different from the patient that one person has had. So you have to tailor your therapy sessions to that patient. So if your professor has taught you that CBT for trauma will work here, but you think that trauma focused therapy might work better, you should learn how you can use certain elements of trauma focused therapy here in your sessions, or say perhaps like JPMR, which is Jacobson muscle relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation. It's basically using a script for 20 to 30 minutes to relax your patient, muscle relaxation, but not every patient will respond to the English version of it, because obviously there are people from various backgrounds. So you have to use a lot of Hindi, which I struggled with personally. So I had a senior who'd written it in Hindi, and I asked to observe her session once so that I could learn from her. So that was possible, and even a lot of like testing involved. Sometimes seniors or even your peers, if they have a test that they've done and they have a patient who needs that test to be done, they would ask you to do it, which was a good group helping situation. And even the professors encouraged people to help each other out, which I think helps everybody involved, even the person who's helping you, because they get to brush up on their knowledge while you get to learn something new, and maybe you can help the next person. Because we helped people like for certain tests, like if I had done a test and my friend hadn't, so I would ask her, or I would help her out in another one of her sessions, or I would let her sit in on one of mine so she could see it. So that was kind of helpful. And in terms of schedule, well, it's long. It was 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 4, sorry, in the hospital. And for me, it was almost an hour and a half journey one way. So like total of 3 hours, 3 hours of travel, and then 9 to 4 there. And 9 to 4 is non-negotiable. You have to stay there because they have an attendance program which is very strict. It's like a fingerprinting thing. And yeah, so we used to stay there till then, and we had to get in early morning because usually at 9 we'd have classes. Sometimes it can be a bit late, like 9 to 9:30, but the professors inform you if they're running late. At least here, I don't know other
Yeah.
places, but they used to do that here. But it is a bit rigorous, so be warned for that at least.
Definitely, Sukriti, and thank you for sharing that experience with you. You mentioned that obviously, and we know that you have been at least 2 years, I guess 2 or 2 plus years, you have been abroad for your masters.
Yeah.
So coming back to India and going back for education and training to a place like Haryana, where mostly there is Hindi language and there is local dialects also, because I'm from Haryana and know that I know that. So how how have you adapted to this, and what you can suggest for people who might be scared of this thing?
Well, good question. The thing with Hindi is I'm fine with Hindi because I'm from a bilingual household, maybe multilingual, but I am from a bilingual household. So in our house, English is actually the default language, than more often than not than Hindi. But even then, I'm fine with Hindi. Haryana is not just like one regional language. You don't just hear Haryanvi. There's a lot of like sects to it as well, and it was very hard on, especially for a lot of patients. Like we had to ask family or we had to ask someone else what they were saying sometimes because I couldn't understand some of the patients. And I it does make you feel a little incompetent because it's a language in India, especially in North India, and you should maybe able to understand things from context. But if you don't, you feel like you're doing something wrong, like a little bit of an imposter syndrome, but not a lot. But you do feel like something's wrong here. But to be honest, it might feel scary going in, and it was scary on some days as well. Not scary, more like confused. Like the language can confuse you, but when you're doing it a couple of times, when you have a lot of patience, when you observe a lot of sessions, you get a general hang of it, and you can always ask patients to repeat themselves, maybe even a bit slower, or maybe use different words, or one of their family members can help you. Because I had patients where I did not understand what they were saying, so I did ask them again, because you have to be clear, you have to ask them properly, because at the end of the day you are assessing them, and if you don't understand something and you mark it, you write something wrong or incorrectly, your entire future plan of therapy changes, and you have a different view of the patient, which you shouldn't have. So you should ask it 10 times, it doesn't matter. Maybe they'll be
Yeah.
annoyed with you, but you should at least have it clear. And we learned the same thing where I mean, when I worked at the NHS, even in there, there were patients with different accents from not English, not Indian, very different accents from places they were from, like the Caribbean. So if I didn't understand something, I just asked, and nobody minded that. So they were like, "Oh, you didn't get it? They'll tell me again." It was fine, but you have to be honest in your approach as well. You shouldn't ask people things just because you're making fun of them. Don't ever do that. I guess a lot of people have the impulse to make fun of accents, so that shouldn't happen, especially in a healthcare sector. I think don't be scared. That's it.
Definitely. हो जाएगा.
Yeah, definitely. हो जाएगा.
Great. Um, Sukriti, when you were sharing your experience about the institute and the whole journey, a question popped up in my mind that as they stay, if because some of the students might be from far places and might have to stay there in the hostel or in the campus. So, if you could just give us some info related to it.
Um, there are hostels in the campus because it's a proper training hospital for MDs and MBBS. So it's a big place, and it's so cut
Yeah,
off from the rest of Gurgaon, I would say, because proper Gurgaon even starts like 40 minutes after where this place was. So there were hostel options inside, there were PG options outside, and even flats to rent 15 minutes away, like proper
okay,
secure buildings, very close. I would say 15 to 20 minutes away from the hospital. So that's good. If I know someone from my course who, I think my course and MPhil, both of them chose to have the apartment 15 minutes, 20 minutes away, which wasn't a PG, it was just a flat to rent. And then there was a friend of mine who did a PG in proper Gurgaon near DLF. Then I think someone got hostel options within the university itself. So if the traveling thing is taking a lot of your time, and cost, it's not cost effective, there are options nearby, so you don't have to worry about that, I think. Especially from
great.
out of state people.
Yeah. So all the options of PG and staying in the campus or taking an apartment also is available for the particular program or the university. So I think
Yeah, but they
students
don't
who are
help you with that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. They don't help you with that. You have to do it
yeah,
yourself. Is yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely. That is something students will have to figure out by themselves. Would you like to take the call, Sukhdeep?
Yeah, just give me a minute.
Definitely, definitely. No worries, we will wait. So we are just going to wait for a minute till the time Sukriti takes the call. It's an important one. Meanwhile, all of you, if you have any questions popping up in your mind, please feel free to share with us. And I would like to just mention here again that we are today talking about professional diploma in clinical psychology from SGT University and the Haryana campus of the SGT University. Two of the points that we have discussed is the experience and how's the institute, how the training, how the routine is there, and the language problems that we usually struggle with when we as students are shifting from one place to another. So this is something that we have discussed, and you will be definitely able to watch it again in the video. So welcome back,
Hi, sorry.
Sukriti.
Hi, sorry for stopping.
No
I was an
worries.
important. Okay,
Definitely,
any
no
other
worries. It's
questions?
G. We wanted to ask to you that you mentioned that you have given the MPhil entrance exams and the diploma entrances also. Did you find any major differences or any major similarities among them?
Um, with the MPhil thing, well, I don't know what happened because I started focusing on this PDCP when I found out about the program, and I also figured that my masters would be a problem for the MPhil thing. I think I did get through the first round, but I didn't really follow up on it because I knew that if there's a problem later on, I shouldn't waste my energy on it, I guess. So I used the same UGC net book to study that people
Yeah.
use for MPhil. That's a really helpful book. Then I also had my masters and my undergrad notes and just the general stuff about therapies as well, because in my one-on-one interview they asked me what therapy I'm interested in, and I mentioned CBT because that's my primary focus, and they asked me question related to it, and REBT as well, I remember, but I'm not that focused on REBT, so I knew the basic information, but they were fine with that because you're not meant to know everything. You're supposed to know the things that you want to focus on as well. So it's okay if you don't know any answer. You should definitely say that I'll learn more on it and stuff like that. So obviously shows more interest in the subject matter as well. The regarding the books and everything, lot of it is all the knowledge that you've learned from say your undergrad and even your masters, because clearly I didn't do my masters here, but I know that the masters here, they do focus first year on your undergrad knowledge, and then the second year they focus on your specific master's knowledge. So you will have a lot of information that you can use, and a lot of your books are very helpful, especially the part about history of therapy and history of psychology. Those are very important bits of information. This historical perspective, I think, comes in a lot in every entrance. Even the MPhil entrance had a lot of focus on it. And then, apart from the historical, there's the modern perspective, which is like currently what is happening after 2010 or even the 2000s. So you should focus those two aspects more, I think, personally.
Thank you, Sukriti, for promptly taking up the questions that were not even asked. So thank you for that. Could you help us with one thing that what are kind of the resources in terms of books or anything students can refer to, to focus on these major topics that you just shared?
Um, I do have the UGC net book here. I can show it to you. If you just give me a minute, I can actually show you the book.
That's fine. We can share with them later on also.
It's the UGC net book that
Yeah.
you have for the preparations. I mainly because it has a lot of subject matter previously given, and they have practice papers, which is quite helpful. If you the entire book, if you finish from first till the end, and then you do the practice papers, you will have a very good chance because those are very very good papers. And then you can get the 10-year papers, the UGC 10-year
Mhm.
papers, those are
Yeah.
good as well. And your and I think the basic the undergrad books for your studies, whatever undergrad books you had, those are very good.
Yeah.
Those books, if you could just like reread them. And there is another book called Synopsis of Psychiatry that will help you even for your entrance and even later on when you're studying, because that book, I mean, I still have it. It's a very good book. It summarizes all the disorders with biological psychosocial perspective, which is very good, I think. So you
Definitely.
could get that book. It's good, helpful book.
Yeah. So, Sukriti, thank you for taking up our questions. Just one last thing from our side, and then we can take the questions from the audience.
Okay.
In regards of entrance exam or specifically interview, any kind of suggestions or advices you would like to give students to prepare themselves or to for the on-spot presence of mind?
Uh, and okay, in your computer-based examination, that's preparation that you do beforehand. So There's no one spot on it. That's preparation. But for your interview as well as your group discussion and the written part, I would say be aware. My question was very generic, like how do mobiles and internet and social media help, are related to teenagers and adolescents. I mean, that's such a basic question. But the people that I had in the group discussion, the people that I had in the group discussion, they chose to focus on, because they were a bit older than me, so they chose to focus on how kids are always on their phone and those kind of things, which is not really what was asked. The question was, how does it impact the mental health? And honestly, it's about how impulsive everybody's becoming and like instant gratification, those kinds of things. And like, you have to be aware of perspectives. So on the spot thinking, I mean, we didn't really have time to Google anything, even though we were at home. And my computer system stopped working, so I had a glitch in my system for 20 minutes. So somehow, after all of that, I was able to get in at the last moment and summarize what I thought, not summarize what everybody else thought, because it's your opinion at the end of the day that makes you stand out in those things. So you don't have to. My personal thing is, don't cut anybody when they're talking. Raise your hand. That's always very polite, and they notice you. The moderators, they notice you, so don't worry about that you're not being noticed. Secondly, cutting people just shows that you don't value their point. So even if their opinion is trash according to you, don't tell them that. Don't let them know that it's bad. Just say, another opinion, like something like that. Be polite about it, and for sure be more aware than, say, the next person. Everything that you hear right now, the war in Ukraine, the geopolitical crisis, the Dow going down, you should have a psychological perspective to it, because you're becoming or trainee psychologist in any way. And clinical perspectives sure are needed, but when they're asking you questions like this in a group discussion, they're probably going to focus on generic things, not clinical things. But when they're doing the one-on-one interview, it's going to be all clinical. Everything about disorders, your chosen form of therapy. You could have anything in your head, and they will ask you, and they're knowledgeable about these things. So you can't exactly like fool them if you don't know something. So don't be like, I might fib and it'll be okay. Don't. Know your answers, and if you don't know anything, don't be afraid to say that I'll look up more into it, or I'm sorry, I don't know, because when you're fumbling for words, it's clear that you don't know. So be sure, just say, I don't know this, but I'm sure I will look it up and I'll learn more about it, uh, whatever the opportunity might be. So be willing to learn. That's just, you have to be aware and be willing to learn. That's it.
So, for the audience who are watching and who will be watching in future, so Kriti ji has shared some key insights related to interview. She has shared one or two questions also that were asked to her in the interview. So please take note of these key insights because that can be really helpful for you. So Kriti, we are done here. We have a couple of questions if you want to take them up.
Sure.
And these can be redundant question, might not be related to the to the session, to the live that we have been having. So I might be able to answer them, and I'll go ahead with that. So there is basically Harshita is asking whether this diploma would be enough to become clinical psychologist, and yes, Harshita, that's correct.
Sure, but your BA Pol Science honors, you'd you'd have to have an MSc in something. You have to have a master's in psychology related field, and then maybe a diploma. But honestly, if you're getting a master's from India and it's in psychology, I would advise you to get the M.PHIL as well, if you can. If you're able to apply for both the courses.
So
And in the,
Kriti, even
sorry, I can't
yes.
hear you. One
So
second. Yeah,
am I audible now?
yeah.
Yeah. So Kriti, this is one question also that is asked to us too. I mean, is there any criteria to say that MPhil is will be more preferable to us, or diploma should be more preferable to us to become a clinical psychologist?
To become a clinical psychologist, well, you understand, MPhil is a 2-year thing which also has the research aspect to it. And when you do MPhil, you can, I think, become a professor directly. But honestly, you can become a professor with assistant professor. I think not a professor. You can become an assistant professor or an associate one without the MPhil as well. You don't need that particularly. It depends on your experience, but mphil I think gives you more access to do research if that's something that interests you. If you really just want to do purely clinical work, when you get the PDCP, you do become a licensed clinical psychologist, but they count it as associate, which really doesn't do any difference to your professional degree or qualification. But if you have interest in academia as a career option, or research, or uh, more focused hospital work, maybe some MPhil people might get an edge, but it totally depends on your experience and interviews and all those things. So you can, they're both great courses. It just depends on which one you can do at that moment, I think.
So thank you, Sukriti ji. I think these are all the questions. The rest of the questions have been already answered by you or by the questions that we have discussed. So
I mean, I can
thanks a
take
lot for
another
patiently.
question if you want, but if it's cool, I'm fine.
So here was another question that Tejal asked, and I think we discussed in a similar way. I would address it a little bit. So, Tejal, mainly what happens with MPhil clinical psychology is this: that if you want to become a trainer of MPhil clinical program, means basically that in future if you want to teach MPhil clinical psychology students in any center or in any institute, then you need to have an MPhil clinical psychology. You cannot teach them without MPhil clinical psychology or with a diploma. You need to have MPhil. So I think the basic criteria to start with, whether to do MPhil or to do PDCP, should be this. The rest is definitely this, that MPhil clinical psychology is of 2 years. So it's going to be better for you to train yourself for 2 years. It will groom you better. And so, Kritiji, I mean, please, we can take your comments on this.
No, I agree. And also to add, you can do, I mean, you can do research with this course as well. But I think with MPhil, you do get a chance to do a dissertation within the course as well. So you actively do your own project within the second year, which is mostly focused on that and statistics. But like after that as well, you can work as a researcher directly. Here also, you might be getting a chance to work, but I think a lot of people that choose the clinical psychology diploma, um, they do end up focusing on the clinical aspect of it rather than the research. So they're happy with their choices. So if you just want to focus on the clinical aspect, you're fine with the clinical diploma, I guess. But at the end of the day, it's up to you and your choices.
And another thing is that if you do MPhil for 2 years, and if you plan to do PsyD after that, you get lateral entry directly in the, I guess, third year or the second year.
Second,
I'm not sure,
second
I'm
year,
forgetting. Second year. In the
second
second
year.
year, you get the lateral entry of PsyD. So there's a benefit too. Uh, Sukriti Nilanjana is asking about the distance degree. So can they apply to this PDCP from SGT University if they have a distance degree, maybe from IGNOU or
If
somewhere?
you have IGNOU, yeah, no, you can apply.
So Nilanjana,
You
go
can
ahead.
apply.
There is this last question from Saurav, and I don't know how to answer this, but maybe you can.
SGT is in itself a big hospital. So, like Amity also has the PDCP program, but they don't have a hospital attached. So Amity just, I think they, whatever hospitals are nearby, they have a um, attached thing with them. I'm not sure about Amity, but SGT in itself is a big hospital, so the patients come directly, and there are patients from literally all backgrounds, so you get a lot of like good exposure in that sense. But to be honest, most of the patients that do end up staying, like in inpatient wards, which we treated, like my patient with substance abuse, I can say. He, although from a, he did have money in its sense, but like his background was, he was from a village, so it's not like he couldn't stay in for a rehab center or whatever, but he chose to stay in a big hospital because he felt that status was included in it. So people around this area, people around the village, they consider this like a big hospital. So a lot of like influential people do end up coming here. But on the flip side, a lot of people from different backgrounds do end up inside. So don't, you will see a lot of different backgrounds of the Indian population. I think so you'll be good.
Gee, thank you, Sukriti. So there are a lot of questions coming in, and they'll keep coming in till you are here. So I'll make this last one. Divya is
Um,
asking, is there a validity? Is
no,
there a
variable.
variability in placement for MPhil and
Placement
PDCP?
as in afterwards for jobs.
After, so the question is there a variability in placement for MPhil and PDCP?
Variability in terms of what? In terms of
Variability in
jobs
terms of
afterwards or in the
jobs
project or training?
in jobs after doing MPhil. Is it like that after MPhil we get a lot of jobs, or is it like after PDCP we don't get jobs?
The jobs in India in clinical psychology, very little. Anybody who can get through gets it. And obviously, I think MPhil has a more, people know more about MPhil. For clinical psychology, this course is relatively new. So if you tell them that you're licensed and you have this course, they will look into your credentials, obviously, and you should apply for places you see seem even if they ask for MPhil. I think if someone who has a PDCP should apply, and I think people have gotten jobs from my course. So or you could do private practice if you're interested in that. So there's always lots of options. And the license in itself, you will get the license number. Like I have my number, so the number doesn't say anything. So when you show that you have a license number, I think they're fine with it when they realize that that is another option as well.
Yeah,
So I think I had someone who did a doctorate and then did this PDCP course because she needed the license. She was already a PhD, but she didn't have the RCI recognized masters or MPhil, so she did this course and now everything is fine. And she works at Fortis, I think. So don't worry about that. There is a lot of there is as much availability for an MPhil as there is for a PDCP.
thank you. So thank you, Sukriti ji. This is all, I guess, for patiently
Thank you.
listening to our questions and answering them in such
No problem.
details and with your personal experience. I think I really enjoyed the examples and the experiences you shared with us. So it was really
Thank you.
glad to have you, and we're really grateful to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vishal. Have a good day.
Yes. So thank you, Sukriti ji. Take care. And with this, a very happy Holi to all of you, to everyone. Take care, and we will be live again soon with more conversations around psychological years and how to move forward to them. Meanwhile, you can ask all your questions. Our team will get back to you with the answers in time. We know you have to wait for a little bit of time, but this is the time we require to answer your questions. And we really support. We really, we are really glad about all the support and all the patience that you show with us. So take care. Have a good day, and best wishes for your career in psychology. Bye bye.